Okay, for the puddles, as you can see in many of our shots, for shot 1 and 2, I should say, we have puddles of water. I'm going to go ahead and show you. They show up pretty quick here. They're in shot number 2 and 1. So here's shot 1. We can see them here. And they're going to require a capturing or catching of reflections. And with shot number 2, we have the same exact issue. So I'm going to go ahead and shoot over there. And if we kind of peruse through here, I'll turn off my ground plane so you can see what's going on. We have a whole bunch of areas here that have water. And this is something that is a subtle effect, even right here, that has to capture the reflections of the harvester as it passes over and so forth. So I'm going to go back to camera 1. And again, the only thing I have on right here is my ground plane. So I'm going to take my ground plane and I'm going to say modify, make live. And I'm going to go to my first shot. You can see it turns green. I'm going to come to the area where I can get as much room here possible to draw out the water. And this is very blurry and so forth, and we'll blur it later on in post. We want to make a rough outline of this. So under polygons, we're going to say mesh, create polygon tool. And while this is live, we can actually draw on it. So I'm going to go ahead and roughly come in here and lay out something that looks pretty simple. It's got sharp edges. And just by clicking them, hit enter. And I've got a little puddle there. And the same thing goes here as well. So I'll kind of like come in here, and if I have to, in the middle of making this, I can kind of scrub through the actual animation, see if I can get all of this as much as possible here. I'll kind of come through here. And you want to get as intricate as possible here. I'll kind of come through here. And this is all going to be blurred in post a little bit, so that's something to definitely keep in mind. And if you have to, you can hit the backspace key to kind of back up if you want to. So I'm going to just roughly kind of put this in and then kind of start moving back a little bit. Again, keeping my hand on the scrub wheel here and just coming through. And I can adjust these curves later on if I want to. So I'm just going to bring it in there. So it's pretty tricky when you do this. You got to really kind of play around. And as you can see here, this mud pile would not be reflective, so we can kind of come around like so. And you just got to play with this a little bit. So I'm going to come in through here, 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 and behind the actual actor. There we go. So we have right here, again, just two really quickly drawn puddles. And if we need to, we can right click on them and choose vertex, and through the object mode, we can kind of fix these. I can kind of move them along on here if I have to extend them out a little bit. Again, nothing's going to have to be perfect on this. This is going to be extremely blurry in the first place. But go ahead and scrub it through while the actual scene is in here, and you'll find that there's certain areas that you'll have to work on, like right here. So again, I could just grab a couple of these points, and I can start extending them out, making sure I'm working in object mode when I move these around. And this is a rough outline. What we eventually render out of Maya will be blurred, so we don't have to worry about the outline being too perfect here. And if you look, we've got a little bit of an offset issue here because probably of our solve. So I'll go ahead and hit Modify Center Pivot. And although the animation of this looks okay here, when we come back, it's off. I'll show you. As we swing back, these curves are off a little bit. And that's just because of this is because of the imperfect lens and the perfect solve. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and wait till I get about right here and hit S for this actual image plane. And when we swing back, I'm going to try to adjust this by animating it myself. It's a cheat. Like this. There we go. And hit S. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move that key back to where he's at the beginning, kind of like hiding behind, so that there's a kind of a trick going on behind the scenes from this frame to here, where we've moved it and cheated, and now it's set up correctly. Same thing goes for this one right here. I'm going to do Modify Center Pivot, and we'll go ahead and kind of look back and see as we look at it here, it matches up fine. So I'm going to wait till I get about right there, hit S, move till it's fully in the shot, move it as best I can. If I want to, I can actually rotate it a little bit. Again, all these are little cheats. So I'll hit S, and then I'll take that keyframe and move it so that it's kind of, again, just flipping of the cards behind the scenes here. Okay, scene build 38 is where we're at, and I went ahead and set my time slider to the second shot and turned on my second camera. And we have a little bit of an issue here. We have this geometry that's being used for the puddles from the first shot kind of overlapping, so there's a little bit of discontinuity there. So what I can do is I can kind of go back a couple frames here, and I can go to a frame 142, and as you can see, we'll go ahead and set a key for this with the visibility on, and I'll move ahead to frame 142 or 143, and then we'll go ahead and put this to off and hit key selected. So in the previous shot it's on, and the new shot it's off. So now I can come over here and set this to 143, and we're ready to go. So again, we're looking for puddles, and the best way to kind of draw a puddle is kind of get as close as you can to it. Like this one's pretty far out here. So what I'll do now again is use my polygon tool and come in here, and it's a little bit more of a defined shot, so I'm going to take some time in kind of laying this out, and then I can kind of back up a little bit here and come in here and keep going as far back as I have to, and then kind of come close to it here like so, and I'll go ahead and hit enter. Now, if it's hard for you to kind of see what's going on over here, there's a cool little trick that you can use. You can say View Select Camera, and you can go into your Attribute Editor. And if you go under your actual camera here, there's a couple options that we can use. One of which is, if I go under Display Options, is a zooming in of overscan. And we've shown you how to do that, where you can kind of move in like this. And that's by holding down Control and left mouse dragging while the cursor is in here. The other thing you can do is what's called an offset. If you can see, there's a little bit of an offset here, and you got to make sure you get the right one. Here's the film offset, and you can move without affecting anything and get really close in by using these two offsets and then this overscan under display options. So I can get really, really close. I'll go ahead and do that here. And again, I'll do my film offset, and I'll come in here and just really get picky with this, making sure I'm, moving these in object mode, and it doesn't have to be perfect. And if I go ahead, I'll just back up, and you can find out what exactly happened here. I'll bring my overscan back out. And you can see it's just kind of set this kind of offset. Nothing's changed. I haven't destroyed my camera or anything like that. So I can just come to my film offsets here and set these back to 0. So we're back in business. So I was able to get in there and kind of really tweak out that. So next, let's go ahead and kind of keep looking through and looking around for puddles here. And we've got one right over here. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of paint that one in. It goes by pretty quick. And you can always do modify center pivot if you want to kind of move it around and so forth. So we'll kind of move through the shot here and look for puddles. And it's very hard to do because of the tessellation level here. Let's go ahead and kind of move up here of our ground plane. So one of the things we can do is with the ground plane select, we can kind of turn it off and on just to get an idea of where everything is at. And we've got a puddle right here, and these are going to be the real important ones because this is where the harvester kind of comes rumbling over the scene here. So with that said, let's go ahead and grab it, and I'll go ahead and turn on the actual ground plane again, and we'll just go ahead and draw in. And I'll back up a little bit, see if there's any point in time, like for instance right here, where we can see more detail what's going on. And I can see that it kind of extends out like that. I'll go ahead and turn it off. You can see there it is. Just go ahead and keep playing these through. And we got a big puddle right here. I'm going to get until I get kind of close enough of this, kind of judge it. It's right there. So again, I'll turn on my ground plane and do my best to kind of judge this. Okay, so I'll go ahead and turn on my ground plane, and I'll go ahead and select it. It looks like it's not selected. but it is, and you can just see it says make not live. So now we've kind of done away with that. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump over to my perspective, and we're going to take all of these pieces of geometry, and we're going to do what we can with them here. So I'm just going to go ahead and take them, and we're going to go ahead, we got some hidden, so I'm going to make sure I kind of back trail here. There's one right there. So just make sure I got every little piece. And we're going to go ahead and group those. So I'll go ahead and hit Control G if I go to my outliner. There they are. And I'll group them, and I'll call them puddles. And that's pretty much it. All right, so now we're going to add some grass for masking. But before we do that, let's go ahead and create a layer. Keep things organized here, and we'll go ahead and call this puddles underscore. And you guessed it, we're going to take the puddles, and we're going to add those to that layer. I'm going to go ahead and kind of move that down here because it's kind of like not that important, and go ahead and hide it. So if I go ahead and turn on my second harvester here, you can see that there's grass and so forth as we kind of scrub through here that should be kind of masking out the tire. Otherwise it's going to look like this actual machine is kind of floating above everything, and it's going to look really, really strange. So what we have to do is kind of paint in where there is proper grass and so forth. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and just turn on my ground plane, as you can see, and we'll go ahead and hit X-ray, and we can start kind of painting in roughly where everything is at here as best as we can. So in order to do that, we can go ahead and just make sure that this is paintable. So under rendering, we're going to go to paint effects, and we'll say make paintable. This allows us to paint effects on here. And then we go under Windows General Editor Visor. Give that a minute to load up. Visor has a ton of things in here, from clouds to flowers to food. What we're looking for is mostly like trees and shrubs and so forth. So if you can see right here, trees are really nice if you have like a tree or something like that. But there's other things in here, like for instance, if we want to jump into grasses, this is what we're looking for. And I usually choose AstroTurf. So here's AstroTurf. I'll go ahead and select it. And if I hold down B down here, I can increase the size of what I can draw. And usually keep your undo button handy because this can really become a pain. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and just kind of draw where I see little patches of where the harvester would kind of travel over. So let's first draw, see how high we get grass. And that's not very high at all. So I'm going to go ahead and increase my brush size a little bit higher and do a quick stroke. So now I'm going to go through here, and where I think there's a little grass, I'm going to put some grass in. And it doesn't have to be perfect, again. So what's good is to kind of have the harvester in the scene. So I'll turn on the harvester. And we're starting with shot 2, and I put my time slider to 143 to 483. And I want to just kind of see, like, where can I kind of add stuff so this actually makes sense. So I'll go ahead and kind of turn off my ground plane once in a while. And I'll just go ahead and come through here. And with the ground plane off, you can still kind of paint on it. And if we can see here, I can just kind of bring in the harvester and see where exactly there's grass needed. So there's a little bit of grass needed here. So I'll kind of grass, grow some in there. There's a big, heavy one here. I definitely feel there should be something there. So let's go ahead and kind of peruse through the shot here. So there's a little bit of grass there, a little bit of grass here. Keep moving along here, a little bit of grass here. And it seems like there's a good patch right here somewhere. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of paint that in. I'm going to increase my brush size to a little bit bigger so it kind of starts to eat in a little bit more. So kind of coming through, we'll just come through and we'll switch over to the harvester number 1 as he shows up. And I want to add some grass by pretty much where his tires sort of start to come in. There should be a lot of grass out there. Again, I'm going to raise the size of my brush stroke here to really get grass that's kind of dense. I'll just kind of keep adding it through the shot here. And I'll just kind of bring it all the way through. Again, we're not going to be rendering this grass. We're basically just going to have it there as a mask. So everything's looking good. Let's move on to harvester number 3. And as you can see, this guy is way out here, so He's going to have some sort of grass in front of him. Let's kind of go back a little bit here. And we'll definitely be able to turn on a ground plane, see what's what here. Let's add just a line of grass across here. And then when it actually falls down, kind of come to the impact here. I'll add a little grass right there. And make sure once in a while turn the ground plane, see that everything is kind of rendering through okay. Just want to see how everything is stacking up as far as layers. So as you can see here, it looks like it's eating through the bottom, but that's without our ground plane actually in. So again, things can be deceiving if you don't have your ground plane kind of figured out. So I'll go ahead and just kind of come in here. Add little bits of little patches here and there where I know there's grass. So with that, let's go ahead and see what happens in our outliner here. We have all these strokes right here. Before we even bother moving on, I want to go back to the very first shot. So I'm going to go ahead and go to camera 1, see if there's anything here that we might need. So I'm going to go ahead and peruse back and make this over to 142. We're going to go ahead and make sure we're looking through camera 1 and that camera 1 is selected here. So we can kind of take a look. Is there anything here that could use grass? And sure enough, we do have that issue. So here's the ground plane. Again, I want to start painting. And I'll just come in here and see what I can do as far as paint stuff that's in the path of the actual motion of the harvester here. So after all that mayhem, let's take a look at what we got from our perspective. We got all this good stuff here. So let's go ahead and open up our outliner again. And we have all of this AstroTurf, as you can see here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all this AstroTurf that I kind of painted out and select it and say modify, convert, paint effects to polygons. Now let's go to the option box first here. We want to make sure, you know, a poly limit is as high as we can go. Some of this stuff might actually shrink, so I'll go ahead and hit convert. So I'll give it a couple seconds. All of this is now actual geometry. So what we can do with those while we still have them selected is we can say edit, delete by type history. We can say Control G to group them. So that's right here. Here's all these dead nodes in here that we got to clear out. So we got strokes and we've got mesh group nodes. So I'm going to delete those. And I'm going to go ahead and call this group grass. And with the grass, we're going to go ahead and leave as is. But for now, let's go ahead and just assign it a material that it can be anything really. It could be the default Lambert material, which is probably what we should assign it to. So I'll just go ahead and create just a Lambert material here. We're going to worry about assigning it to something later. So I'll go ahead and go under materials and under Maya. And we'll just go ahead and pick out your typical Lambert. Again, I'll go to my outliner here, grab the grass and assign it. This will be used again for masking. So again, I'll go over here to camera 1 really quick. And if I turn off all this wireframe on shaded, I should start to see where the grass is. I'll use default material and you can start to see where it's at. So as we peruse through the shot here, I'll go ahead and turn off camera 1 so you can kind of see where the grass is coming in. And that's where our grass is going to overlap. And I'm going to go ahead and jump over to harvester. Bring on harvester 2 and 3, as well as 1. And we'll go over to camera 2. Again, we'll set these up. Shot number 2. Kind of play through here and see where the actual pieces come in. Now, if you want to, you could scale these up. As you can see, these are pretty small. So you can grab them, say modify center pivot, and you can kind of scale them up if you want to. So we'll go ahead and kind of look at that really quick. Like, do we want to take these and say modify center pivot and just scale them up a little bit so that when the actual geometry kind of comes over the actual grass, you'll have some height to it that kind of eats in a little bit. You can kind of spread these out a little bit. So I'm going to take a couple minutes here and just kind of pre-adjust all of these little grass pieces. So here is just a quick play blast of shot 2 how the grass, as you can see, will be used as a mask to kind of eat into the tires when it comes time for rendering, which it is time to do so. So we're about to enter into lighting and render layers.